welcome to this session, Strengths-Based Recruitment Now and in the Future. My name is Nicky, Garcea, and I'm one of the co-founders for an organisation called Capp. I set this business up 14 years ago as a strengths-based business, so putting this presentation together has actually been quite cathartic, thinking about some of the lessons that we've learned over the last 10 years and also where I see strengths-based practice going in the future. It's very likely that some people in the room have heard about strengths, and over the last 14 years we've seen a radical increase in the use of strengths in recruitment, particularly in graduate and apprentice hiring, and I'll explain why that's happened. Recent data from ISE suggested over about 40% of graduate and apprentice recruiters are now implementing some form of strengths in their process, whether that be an interview or as part of the assessment centre. We do see the numbers now increasing, particularly in volume hiring, in service roles, and I've recently done some work with on the board of a FTSE 100 looking at strengths-based practice as well. So really it's becoming a little bit more cradle to grave. Internationally, strengths have been recognised for some time. Capp's got offices in New York and Sydney, and certainly in those regions we're seeing strengths-based practice get picked up. A lot of our global clients like Gsk, who I'm going to talk about a little bit today, are also using strengths-based methodologies. I've recently got Invisalign braces. This is great to have a strengths-based company. I'm glad I've not got a line of sausages because it's pretty hard to say. So, in terms of strengths with the lisp, these are the components from a Capp perspective of what make up a strength. Alex Lindley was a professor at Leicester University when he helped set Capp up with myself, and his research pointed very directly to this being the underpinning of what a strength was. So if any of you are familiar with other strengths methodologies, you might notice that we've got kind of 3 distinct pillars. And just to speak to those for a second, performance you would probably measure in any great competency process. So it's where your interview example is how good you are at something. And the real distinguishing feature when we look at a strength is this component around energy, and that's to do with the level of motivation someone feels when they're in the job, and ideally that you also want to deploy that strength often. That's where the use comes in. So we talk a lot at Capp about helping businesses find not just can-do but love-to people, individuals that have got a massive passion for delivering great work. Now, everyone in the room, you have got maybe at least 20 strengths in play at any one time. So when you're going forward for a job, it's not that all 20 are probably going to be measured. It might just be that we're looking to see if you've got a top 8 or 10. But ideally, and I know we're talking about recruitment today, ideally then the development process would also then nurture that broader range of strengths that you would have available. So over the last 14 years, I mentioned that we've been collecting global data. We're a group of psychologists, so we love to run a meta-analysis, and this is our meta-analysis of over 1 million of our clients, their candidates, and these were the kind of the strengths that were coming through in those recruitment processes. So this is global data. I haven't run a campaign now, recruitment campaign, in any emerging talent through to board where collaboration hasn't been on the radar. The world might be virtual, we might see our colleagues less, but my goodness, do we need to be able to work well with them. So collaboration, very high. And I wonder if there's a place for collaboration with drive here. So we have to do an enormous amount of work at pace, but we better be nice to people while we're doing it. So these two, I think, are interesting hand in hand, because one without the other creates quite a different dynamic in the workplace. Interestingly, I think the other strengths that are coming through here are no surprise. Adaptability, massively on the rise as we've got agile workforces. we're seeing a rise of people interested in looking at cognitive and technical capability with a strengths lens. So let's just kind of give you an example of that. You might want to, and you wouldn't want to, recruit me for an accountancy role, but just say you did. It wouldn't be just kind of, was I good with numerical data? You would be wondering how motivated I was around handling numerical data. So that's where that lens comes through. And then things like growth mindset, capacity to take on more and more information, and learning agility. So these are the trends that we're seeing. Words, I'm sure, that might be in some of your competency frameworks. The big distinction here is we tend to go quite narrow when it's a strength, so it's not kind of deliver results. For us, that probably has got 5 or 6 strengths within it. But also the lens we're using is quite distinctive. In terms of how recruiters are deploying strengths across a recruitment process, increasingly we're seeing the rise of the realistic job preview, and sometimes that might sit on a website, it might be used for career matching purposes, it might be used as a sort of a deterrent. You've not got the strength, thanks but no thanks. It might be used to increase hard to reach talent, but realistic job preview in many guises very, very much on the rise for us globally, and I'll come back to why that's helpful. Clients have like huge conferences for graduates where they bring 100, 200 people together. Other clients just doing a great 90-minute session, maybe with some virtual reality, really getting to the heart of those strengths. And then a final stage which we're huge advocates for is the baton passing from recruitment into development. We do a lot of work handing the recruitment data in a format that can be used for onboarding, whether that be an onboarding report, it might be a talent cohort report of everyone across the year who's applied for that job, but really making the most of that talent data that's come through the recruitment process. And you can see there on the online side, at a minimum, letting 30% be declines, but every single person that applies, giving them really customised feedback, but all delivered with technology. One of the things for us that we found enlightening and we're really pleased by is nearly all of our candidates that do open up one of our online assessments, we've got a completion rate between high 80s to 95%. So even in processes where perhaps there's never been any online assessment, people are still going on to complete. So I mentioned the deployment of this work across different clients and sectors, and I thought it would be good just to highlight a few for you. And I am being slightly ambitious to trot through 3 case studies and a few more slides, so I won't show all the videos that I've embedded, but just to give you an example. So I've got here an example of GSK's global graduate, apprentice and Esprit process. And Esprit is for MBA hiring. GlaxoSmithKline are working across 67 countries, and they've embarked on a journey with us on using strengths, but also aligning strengths to their leadership expectations, which everyone in the business is recruited on the basis of, and also their values. And the journey started actually in the yellow box, an online assessment. We wanted to produce a piece of online content for GSK that really took out like a montage of customer stories. So I challenge anyone to watch what is their assessment and not sometimes shed a tear, because it's diverse in the stories that are told. So you hear from GSK employees, you hear a range of dilemmas that you might face if you're working for GSK globally, and then the kind of action pauses and candidates select. They have to rank order different decisions, and those decisions could be performance-based, back to that original definition, but they could also be emotional and engagement-based. So how did you feel about this dilemma? And the success of that initially led them to go on to take their journey into what we call job simulation, so to put some role-specific content onto a video platform, and to now measure the strengths related to the job, and then to take that stage further into the assessment centre, where they get to do a series of, we call it micro exercises, so we take one strength at a time, and candidates are assessed with a strengths-based interview and micro exercises. Some of the results of this for GSK have been really astounding candidate feedback, but also a level of efficiency that they've never had globally. So they've managed to reduce the number of days spent on hiring by 111 days. So there's been a cost saving for that investment. I'm going to show you just a high level, a little bit about their process. It's a 3-minute video. I'll probably just give you a minute.
Welcome to the world of Gsk Assessment, our new online global assessment for early talent recruitment. Introducing a single immersive-based assessment tool has given us an exciting opportunity to evolve the recruitment process for our candidates. We want to reflect GSK as an innovative and progressive employer. And using a video-based assessment means that we can bring to life our culture and give unique insights into the work that we do. The experience allows a candidate to judge for themselves whether GSK is right for them, increases our brand awareness, and improves candidate engagement at later stages of the recruitment process. Assessing a candidate's behavioural fit and cognitive ability provides a deeper insight into the candidate's overall fit and allows us to drive more informed recruitment decisions. Including an automated assessment at the early stage of the recruitment process is a more efficient use of recruiter resources and time.
I'll stop it there, but hopefully you can see the kind of level of insight that the graduate's getting. So just to move on to quite a different organisation with McDonald's. McDonald's in the volume space wanted to differentiate themselves in their front of house roles. So we embarked on really understanding what might be the strengths that would define success in those leadership, front of house leadership roles. That led us to a very particular strengths profile, which we put together for them. And this deployment, because it was for onto mobile phone, it needed to be very quick for people to complete. This was quite a different assessment process. So essentially, you've got just photography supporting the dilemma, the day in the life. Rank ordering still there, just done on the mobile phone, could be done in the restaurant as you're applying for the job. And then a strengths-based interview, which the recruiter completes. So the deployment at McDonald's has been kind of smaller than what you can see at GSK, but still very impactful from a customer service perspective, and finding people who are going to be fantastic at those front of house roles. I thought it was just worth pulling out here, if you were ever thinking about bringing in a strengths-based interview, what were some of the differences between a competency-based approach and a strengths-based approach? One of the biggest things is this relentless observation of the motivation in the interview, so asking questions around how someone feels about that example, how motivated they are, but also quite a lot of the questions are scripted. So rather than going down your STAR technique, you might have more questions, but the assessor hasn't got quite as much room to come up with their own questions. You're more digging into the exact strengths that are needed for the job. And then my last example actually is slightly more in the transformation space. So this is set in Aviva. Aviva wanted to differentiate themselves in the customer service space. And one of the things they prepared 2 years ago was, what would it be like to be a leader in 2020? And what they wanted to do was then assess incumbent cohorts in quite a developmental way against that profile. The challenge to us as Capp was they built this is their week in the life of a leader, but they didn't want any online assessment and they didn't want any interviewing. So nothing about past performance could be put within their development centre. So we really partnered with them to develop a half-day assessment for development centre that then got accompanied by follow-up coaching and debriefing that Aviva ran themselves, trained up by Capp, but all run in-house. And one of the things we did feature within that development approach was the use of Capp's virtual reality technology. And what we have spent time over the last 4 or 5 years is developing virtual reality that can assess in a virtual room particular strengths. So you might go into an auditorium like this and you might be assessing the strength of learning agility. I might have, as I just did, close the deck down, now I've got to present to you, and you're looking at my learning style. You've got things like critical analyst with those scales, and what we also then coupled the virtual reality with was micro exercises, so short exercises, but using the technology that leaders might be using in the future to train their staff to speak to clients. That came today in a half-day session. One of the things that was very key to Aviva was how was it perceived in the business to go through this quite radical transformation, but also that there wouldn't be a difference in different groups. So one of the key groups was, with the amount of technology we were using, was there a demographic difference? And what we found was groups certainly kind of 50 and above were actually outperforming some of the younger cohorts. So the virtual reality didn't have a kind of negative impact there. And also what was quite enlightening was that different grades were sometimes outperforming people maybe 3 or 4 grades ahead. So this centre was giving insight to potential and engagement that perhaps they couldn't have found with other approaches. So I've got just a snippet.
He wasn't wrong when he said that it wasn't going to be easy. I did find it challenging, yet also very rewarding.
I thought the development sessions were one of the better ones put on by Aviva, really well thought out, fast-paced, and really made you think about what Aviva would be like as a leader in the future.
To summarise the development centre in one word, I would say honest. We were challenged and pushed to see what we were all about, and I feel that it's not something you can easily rehearse to the same extent.
How did I find the development centres? I was really nervous beforehand, but when I got into the day, I thought they were brilliant. I really enjoyed it, and afterwards reflecting on it, the feeling of investment that kind of been given to leaders was something that I've never experienced before.
Just want to pick up on one thing that one of the delegates said there, and that was about it being unrehearsed. Many people who move to a strengths-based process in development or assessment do it because they feel like their traditional approaches or methods are delivering the same results, and often when it's in a recruitment process, leading candidates to say repetitively very similar answers. What a strengths-based process does is really removes that. It gets more to the heart of the person. One of the things that we found is that the read on things like authenticity and engagement is much higher when people are recruited for strengths. So a couple of bits of feedback here in terms of candidate experience. I've mentioned that typically candidate experience is strong, but also then some business results. So we have been, there we go again, it's the wind tunnel. We've been delighted to see where we've been using strengths, not just in graduate but also in volume hiring, the actual tangible business results that it's having within things like attrition, within satisfaction, and sickness and absenteeism. One of the things that we attribute to that sickness and absenteeism result is that when you recruit people and they get to use their strengths at work, there is much less workplace stress on those individuals when they actually get to be developed. If you think about the current climate, and I've obviously run this business through 2008 and 2009, where I'm hoping we're not heading back to, but perhaps there will be kind of lashings of that. And one of the big things for us was actually where strengths were deployed in recruitment and development, that the workforces, despite the tension at those points, were better able and were more resilient at those times. So maybe one to consider as we move forward. Two things just to leave you on in terms of the future. Certainly when we look at something like the GSK case study, we found that strengths was not the only bit of that early discovery phase. It was that we were looking for values and cognitive elements. It's just the lens in which we looked at them was broader. So increasingly at Capp, when we go through, we call it success analysis, at that very first bit of a project, we're looking to try and predict the whole person, what might be all of the job performance in role. So blending strengths with other assessment types is definitely, I think, where the greatest predictor will come. The other thing for us, and I wonder as you kind of leave this session and take this away, is even if you have no budget to do something online, think about assessing your behaviour in the context to which you want that behaviour deployed. So anywhere where you can give greater context, you will get a much, much better read on a candidate. And then also, and we can already see this, if you think of that meta-analysis we're running, we're looking the whole time at can we train AI models to be able to look for strengths? Is there a way of asking far less questions in order to assess particular strengths? Getting your data right at the beginning is really a key part of that. So as you maybe ask questions and leave this session, a couple of things to leave you with. Are you attracting can-do, love-to people? Are the people that are coming into your business really highly motivated to be there because through the recruitment process you were really tapping into their motivation, not just for the job but for every behaviour you were going to ask them to deploy when they were successful? Could you, if you're not already, consider measuring, and I put in our scoring sheet here, somebody at Capp's going to kill me for doing this, can you measure both capability and engagement? We look at both with every single bit of measurement we do, whether that be an interview, group exercise, we're always looking at the two together. Can you increase how you measure behaviour in context? I've just spoken to that. Many of our clients just started off doing a pilot of a strengths-based interview. So are there places where you could incorporate strengths kind of with some ease? And with nearly every project that we've ever worked on and partnered with clients, there has been an area somewhere where the recruiter felt they could do a better job and where they thought strengths might just ignite a better result for them. So maybe just think about, are there places where you could essentially just give it a go? I'll leave on these candidate testimonials, but really happy to also take questions now as well. Thank you.